Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer McConnell, the founder of Living Legacy, and I'm delighted to have on this week's Living Legacy Conversations, Caraldine Nolan from Weighless Wonders, and we're here to talk about nutrition. Over the last number of weeks, we've had various guests talking about how to live a fulfilled life, how to get our digital legacy in order, get our house in order, think about fitness and mindset. So really, it's now opportune to talk about nutrition.
So I have a colostomy bag. I'm a full-time ostomy user. So I would have to look of my body suffers from malabsorption of some form. At 29, I lost my womb. So again, I instantly started back as far as in my early 20s of like not producing my own vitamin B12, my own magnesium, my vitamin D, my own estrogen. So there was so much. So I've been going through perimenopause for 12 years, or symptoms thereof, until my last ovary gave up 2 years ago. And I realized that I had the ability in me somewhere to be able to deliver this message, as hard hitting as it was, but because I'm a person who's classed as actually somebody with a disability, so people listen to people who have been through that real experience. And I personally feel that when I'm delivering the message and I'm able to say the hard facts, people listen more because I've lived it. Whereas if it's just somebody saying, this is this and this is what you do, you haven't experienced it. It's very different. And that's why when you're delivering something with passion, I think it's not really a sell. You're not trying to sell anything to somebody. You're actually trying to educate them. Truthfully educate them. And I literally have lived a real life of malabsorption. I've had mental health medication put upon me that made me gain a savage amount of weight, and I'm huge on medications for nerve pain and back pain, and I literally can understand when a person comes to me and says, I always say to them, if they said, oh, since I've seen you last, my first question is, are you on medication? And if they say, and I'd ask straight out, are you on mental health medication? Because I actually can understand, because I gained 5 stone in 3 months. 5 stone in 3 months. So I've been on medication and similar medications twice and 3 times since, and understood the effects it had on my body through me being able to educate, first of all, by learning, understanding nutrition, but by being able to then put my skills into place for myself, and understanding then as the time went on, when I had women or men, mostly women, who would come to me and say, maybe I'm on amitriptyline or I'm on, an antipsychotic, and I'd say, hang on, we aren't at a losing weight point here. We're on a battle against, staying the same, because you're going to be craving as an addiction sugar. But it slows down our metabolism, but so does a lot of things. So if you think about this, if my thyroid goes low, the doctor will give me a thyroid medication. If my vitamin D is low, I get vitamin D medication. If I'm perimenopausal, I have to scream, shout and roar for estrogen to be put into my body if somebody will give me estrogen. If somebody doesn't have estrogen, that means their body and their metabolic system is not running correctly. Therefore, they start gaining weight in the center. We'll just talk about the midriff of a woman for a second, in the midriff of their stomach, and they gain visceral fat, and that's the bad fat, because they start off in gyms and start eating like protein shakes and different foods, and that they don't need. Cortisol levels are staying high. They're very high and agitated. And what happens is we don't lose weight, so we gain weight around our tummy area, which is the bad fats. And that's what you mostly see people, even myself this year, I went through it myself until after 2 years, they finally said, yep, she's finally in there. But when I was in there, I'd gone through so many symptoms. They were too high. Again, I got there, but I got on them, and it's amazing effect. But we shouldn't have to suffer this way. So I always feel like I'm a huge advocate, because I've done the malabsorption. I understand malabsorption. So I understand that actually a person shouldn't go to a GP, and I'm just saying a GP in general, and say, oh, hi, Mary, you're lacking in, or you're now perimenopausal. I'm going to write you up for calcium, like without blood, calcium, vitamin D, B12. We should be getting this from food all along, and that's not there, and it's not in Ireland. It's not in Ireland. We're being fed by tablets. It doesn't matter if it's a cold, a flu. We're next to American prescriptions. We're not too far off.
So, Caraldine, I suppose first off, I would say what really brought you to my attention was, I know we had come across each other on like different networks, and I know you're very involved at Network Ireland. in the Dublin branch, as am I, quite a new member to the Network Ireland branch as well. But it's also the videos that you actually have done on Instagram, on LinkedIn, to really bring notice and awareness to people about how to better understand the food we eat, the labeling, how to actually know what we're putting into our bodies. Never really had a particularly good relationship with more kind of the habit of eating. Always enjoyed my food, but that thing of I would wake up and then go, oh, I don't have time for breakfast, so I'll get something, and inevitably by the time I get to work it will be possibly a coffee or a tea with a scone or something that is not actually going to give me any nourishment really to start the day. Then it would get to lunchtime and again I'd go, oh, I don't have time. So it could be 3 o'clock in the afternoon before I'd actually have a lunch, and then I'd be having a dinner at 8:30. Now, thankfully, through the work I've done, I now get up in the morning and I will have usually like an omelette or some form of protein to start me. But it took me a long journey to try and understand, like that, what was I not absorbing in my diet? What was my hormone level like as well? Because again, through just stress and anxiety, my cortisol levels through the roof, my estrogen levels through the roof. So even in terms of, you talk about perimenopause with no estrogen, I'm the other end. I'm 49 and I've got too high an estrogen level. So even trying to bring that back down is more about the synthetic estrogens and how to reduce my contact with plastics, how to better understand what foods I'm eating that may be actually causing estrogen.
So you're looking at the environmental, which is like an eco score, which is what you're going to be looking at. And again, not in Ireland.
Whenever my birthday comes around each year, which is usually, well, not usually, but it is in June, I would go to the dentist, the doctor, I get all the whole rake of kind of like an NCT for myself, but at least I know each year how I am. And this year, what came back was like my estrogen levels, it said on the report above panic level, which I thought, well, that's a really bad wording to put on a report. But last year it was, I had too high a potassium level. So again, it's those things, but then you're not told what to do about it. It's just like, well, come back and get your bloods done again in 6 weeks. But I'm not told what to do within that time frame.
I also think it's really important, and it's never mentioned, that my blood's done millions of times knowing there was something wrong with me because I was getting migraines, and I only had them as a teenager going into my period. So I was very late getting, like, I am probably unlucky, but lucky. I only got my periods when I was 13 to 29. Like, so I didn't suffer like the way other people did. But what it did bring to me was like that when this something was happening to me in the last couple of years, when I was getting the oily skin here and the headaches, that something was happening to me. So I understood the hormonal changes. But a lot of people think, I'll just get my bloods done. They forget to actually say to the doctor or understand how to say to a doctor. And also a lot of things that I did realize in the last couple of years was that foods can alter, can change, and can literally hinder those symptoms. So, if you're COVID being a big one, actually, people who have COVID and they might come back to a class. We have a workshop and we haven't seen them for a couple of weeks, or they're in class. They come back and I'd be like, and they'd say they'd have COVID, and I go, before you step on the scales, when did you have it last week? Or like, if they're not stepping on scales, it's online, was it last week? Because the week after, people, it's actually been scientifically proven so far in research papers that I've been reading anyway, is that people crave carbs as the following week. It's actually a craving. So they're craving carbs, which is a form of sugar. So again, and then they're hardening themselves, thinking that they were eating all week when they could barely eat, taste, or swallow, and why am I up, etc., because I was eating bread or whatever. And it's like, they're not doing anything wrong, that kind of way. So there's an awful lot of I suppose in Ireland we need a lot of education around food, and I think like government policy and what will probably come out at the end of it all is it's very led by money and government.
Can I ask then, so obviously you created Weighless Wonders, so can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I created a couple of years ago, and we kind of, I'm not going to say reinvented ourselves. I've always been a woman of big ideas, but we probably have. So I started off first just doing like classes, in-person and virtual classes. Then I had a couple of girls who were also ex-Weight Watchers coaches, and we were kind of working together. And I just always had this ambition about me that like I have to be able to help more people, and I was understanding more. So I was standing in front of classes. So I should kind of say that I have a son who had a food aversion due to a cleft palate when he was born. So we hadn't got the knowledge he was a cleft palate. So he was NG and peg fed for years. So for us, I learned so much about sensory through all of through all of this, and also understanding of, you'll sometimes see in my videos, I talk a lot about kids because it's excruciating. There's like one centre in Ireland for kids with obesity, or with actually, sorry, with food issue in Ireland, but we have the highest in Europe. So for me, I'm quite passionate about it because I've seen what happens in them rooms myself on a personal level, if that makes sense. So I'm not getting sidetracked on my
So what kind of work do
What do you do?
so we went on to like do calories, and after a while I realized that well, not after a while, very soon after, I was like, calories can't just be calories, because if I'm eating calories myself and Mary down the road is completely different. I could give Mary the same exact meal plan as I'm having, and I could give somebody else the same amount of meal plan as what I was having. And I realized I was doing calories and it was all going great and everything was going fine. But then I was looking at, like, I'm following influencers as well, because remember, I'm a human being, and I'm looking at people putting breakfasts, and every day this was happening, where there was like banoffee style pie with Weetabix and a protein yogurt, and I'm like, okay, Caraldine, this is all great, but I was actually gaining following, this kind of way in my head, and I'm like, wow, this doesn't work. And I'm like, so I got this idea in my head that there has to be more, somebody has to represent the health of this country. And I know it's going to seem mad, but that's literally the idea I got in my head. I'm like, I don't want to be selling calories just on its own. I want to be able to do something completely different. So I made connections. I met a woman one day, and I had a chap actually from the very start called James Barrett. He's my Leo advisor from day one. And he always kept telling me, you've got a lot going on between here. More than anybody I've ever seen before. And I kind of was like, yeah, I know, I think differently, and I'm sorry about that. Like, that's just my personality, and I'm a quick paced thinker, but I always think outside the box. So I'm always looking for that something different. Does that make sense? So I made all these different connections, and I decided I met with a couple of people at Enterprise Ireland, and I kind of said, I'm going to do the New Frontiers program. I'm going to design my own app here, because I can't trust that like an American app, like, I don't know if I can mention it, but like my fitness pal, who has like allows Mary down the road to enter in the wrong calories, is correct. It allows her to go below 1200 calories, which is against European guidelines. And it's talking about ounces or different things that are not of European standard. So I can't allow this to happen, as morally, as a person, I couldn't allow that to happen. So I said, I'm going to design my own app. But then I decided I was going to do an app with a difference. And then I did a lot of research. And I researched the Nutri-Score, the Eco-Score, and the Nova-Score. So I wanted to first talk to people about ultra-processing food and how this ultra-processing, but I realized that even if I put AI on, this wasn't going to be just enough. So I got the Nutri-Scores. So we made collaborations, because we already had a food tracker in France. And think of this like a washing machine. Karen, one of the girls, who's actually a really good coach, gave me this analogy, so I have to give her full credit for it or I'll be shot. But she said, think of it like a washing machine. So forever the word, you want to be eating foods that are of A value and B value. It's like buying a washing machine. You don't want to be having D's and E's, if that makes sense. So when you're taking in foods that are A quality, an A quality rating, essentially what you're doing is you're taking in food with less additives, less salts, because that's how the scoring is made up. It's sugar, salts, fats. So the food that you're taking in is actually healthy. Does that make sense to you? So I'll show you an example.
Like, I have an interest in food security. I come from having run, Irish Seed Savers, which was all about seed and growing your own food, and actually even considering what is the nutritious value of when you're bringing seed from abroad and growing it. Do people actually know what the soil content needs to be to ensure that it is actually nutritious soil to then grow that seed into nutritious food? But the thing as well is that we've become so disconnected from our food source and actually from our food that we need to ensure that we're eating a right, I suppose, diversity of food to ensure we're getting a healthy diet. How do you actually get people to connect in with that, rather than when they get sick or they've got a health diagnosis, or or they know somebody that's had a health diagnosis? Quite often then it's too late. So how do you actually get people to connect in with that, the importance of it now?
So the Nutri-Score will be placed on all, well, it's in all products. So if you can see here, this is actually in Tesco's, this yogurt, in Tesco's, Aldi and Dunnes, and it's Yoplait Skyer. So Skyer already are backing this, Yoplait Skyer are backing this score already. And there's Dr. Oker has it on a couple of products, and there's a couple of the larger brands who are backing this score. And this score is out in other countries. So what we're actually doing as a company is we've launched the app, the Nutraverse, which I was telling you. It's in the Apple stores at the moment, but it'll be in the Play Store, please God, this week, or I'll be grey. So it should be there this week. And what it does is that we're going to do a research paper, and we're going to work with the Irish Health Research Board and complete the research, because it's already been proven that by people understanding the scores, so if you had 100 people in the room, and if they were scanning the product or able to visually see the likes of, I'm picking up my Actimel now, sorry, this one, I'm picking up my Actimel now, and that's a B rating, or I'm picking up my, you know, drink that's an A rating. If I know what's in the product, I'm not worried about calories, I'm not worried about sins, I'm not worried about bites, I'm not worried about, you know, simple servings. I actually am picking up foods that are healthy for me, and that the food choice that you make automatically bring weight loss. But also, the research showed that it had a different outcome from people who had cancer, which means that the positive outcome. So that means that maybe that the people who were, instead of gone home with an information leaflet to eat fruit and vegetables and fiber, may essentially had a longer, you know, lifespan, or may have actually been not as ill because they weren't eating as much processed food. And we're doing that exact research paper.
Father has vascular dementia, but last year he was diagnosed with prostate cancer for the second time. He'd had it
in 2007, and he was always quite a healthy eater, but he loves to snack. So he would love to go and have the bread and the butter and the marmalade and the whole lot. But then actually, when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer last year, it was like he went into a bit of a shock. And also at that time, the dementia was starting to take hold. But he actually forgot to snack, and he lost a ton of weight. But in the sense of, we were all like, ooh, this is a little bit worrying. Now, thankfully, things have righted themselves. He's now on the medication that he needs, but he was borderline diabetic. He had a bit of a heart atrial fibrillation, you know, has the dementia, has the prostate cancer, the whole lot. But the thing is, now actually all of his levels have dropped. He never got the treatment for the prostate cancer because he's 82, but also he didn't have any symptoms, but his levels dropped sufficiently that actually he wasn't that bad. But even borderline diabetic, that's gone down significantly. All these different things, but a lot of it was actually that element of, now he has a dietitian who is actually helping him and my mum to better understand where he is actually prone to having issues with regard to lack of nutrients or taking in too much food, and it's all kind of balancing out. But again, it took that shock before he was getting the right support, and also engaging properly with better understanding what he needs to do.
Not all nutritionists even understand or know yet about the Nutri-Score. So that's one big thing. So there's a lot of education for us even to do around this, and that's why we're going down to do the research paper regarding the likes of your dad, who actually, to be fair, I think I mentioned to you I was in a similar situation where I had the most wonderful father-in-law, and it always just stuck in my head that he came home and said, I have to eat loads of fruit and vegetables. And I don't know ever to this day, was that a cure? What did you think it's going to be a cure or anything? But even in our own house here, like, I genuinely eat really healthily. And a few weeks ago, that was taken away from me, where I got a paresis. And I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's where your body like paralyzes the stomach, and it stops you from being able to digest the food. And all I could think of every single day was the chicken dinner that the hospital was putting down me to stay of it. But all I wanted every day was this chicken dinner that I couldn't eat. And I like fruit and vegetables, and that was the last thing I was able to eat. But it's very important for us to understand as well is that each of us are very different individuals, and that food at the moment in Ireland is an epidemic between 35 to 55-year-olds, both male and females, of cancer. So the rates are huge. And what the one commonality we all have is actually what we eat. And 60% of the food that goes into everybody's trolleys here is ultra processed. And food transparency, there is no law against food transparency in Ireland. I'm just going to give you a little example, okay? So if I came off this call and people decided I'm going to be really, really healthy, even understanding that is like, and this is as simple as how people can make mistakes. So both of these say that they're lentils in water, okay? But one is, this is lentils and in water. That's the ingredients that's in that pack. But this one is, I'm trying not to show brands too much, but this one is lentil water, absorbic acid, firming agents called calcium and chloride. So it's not just lentils in water. It is, and you know, thinking that we're going to be healthy, if you're a person whose metabolics aren't as good as they used to be when you're in your 20s, that is going to start slowing you down. Now you have this, and then you start adding in other factors into place, such as I'm going to be really good and start having porridge because I'm after joining Weighless Wonders or some club that you're doing, and you start saying, I'm going to have porridge, but I don't have time. I'm going to have this porridge instead. This has changed. This is this is actually classed as processed. It's not the end of the world. It's number 3, but it is processed. And what happens is it drops all the way to a C rating because they had to have additives in this to the mix, even though all you have to do is add water to this. So it's very, very important that people understand that usually convenience means a lot more than what, you know, it's not just being healthy. So even like a simple change, like I'm being a bit lazy, I'll pick up a few of them every week. But if you start having this, it starts adding up into a lot of other things.
I'm involved in food security, and I do social research on food security in Ireland, but I'm doing it from a farmer, fisher and grower perspective rather than side. But the thing is, well, is that we have really become a convenience culture. So it's everybody's busy. They've got huge more responsibilities than probably they had many years ago. People are trying to juggle work and family and just so many different things that quite often going into a supermarket, it's the quick fix. It's the thing that you can get will allow you to then go, okay, I think now I've got food. But actually you haven't. You may have some form of a food, but actually you don't nutrition. And it's that level of we need to connect in with the nutrition rather than the food item as such.
Exactly. And one of the biggest things is January, September, everybody always goes on a healthy eating. It's psychologically ingrained in us. And that's what advertisement and TVs, and you start seeing the foods. And I did mention to you a while ago about the labels. And when you usually see a lot of health claims on something that is ultra processed, doesn't matter what it is, it's ultra processed. But a lot of things, and this was, I did a little video on this on my Instagram, I think it was, or everything. But I really love this analogy, okay? So I love this bar because it says I'm going to be a skinny millionaire, okay? And if I was going to lose my weight again, I can guarantee you that'd be the first thing that was in my trolley because all I seen was 75 calories. So if I see 75 calories and I see that I'm going to be skinny and a millionaire is also in it, that is going in my trolley because I'm thinking I'm getting a dessert and everything. Whereas this ugly looking bar because it is ugly brown, it doesn't have most pleasant. It's a muesli bar. It says no added sugar, and that's the only health claim except for it's 2 stars. So they openly admit there's a sweetener in it, which I love, by the way, because I have a huge thing about sweeteners. And this is an A rating, considering a C rating of this bar. But you can't help that a lot of foods we're going to eat are ultra processed. But what you can help is the choices that you make between these 2 bars. This skinny millionaire has 79 ingredients, which means it's more ingredients in it than calories.
How much does the other one have?
35, which is still a lot.
You're talking about like the Nutraverse, but you're talking about the grading. How can we find out what the grading actually is?
So you basically, our app is in Apple at the moment, but it's not in a soft launch. I keep saying to everyone it's soft launch, which means like there might be little glitches and little things because it only launched the other day. And that's why we haven't announced it yet. It's not in the Play Store yet. So when the 2 of them are in the Play Store, it's basically just scan the product for you, and then you'll be able to track your calories, etc. And then in a couple of months' time, there'll be a lot more exciting add-ons to it. That will be able to give you a lot more or more prompt you with a lot more information. One of the big things for me is that, like, I'm just going to show you something. So this is technically the healthiest item on the market. If anybody knows it, it's Diet Coke. I think a lot of people drink Diet Coke, and they think that this is so healthy because it's like only 1 calorie per serving. But a lot of things that people miss is usually this can says it serves 2, but everybody sits down and has it and 1. It actually does say that, right? I got a shock when I seen that. I don't drink fizzy drinks just by nature, but it also has like ingredients in this, and it's really not like it's. I'm going to just list out 1 or 2 of them to you, right? So the first thing that's on it is carbonated water. Then it says caramel E150D. Now that is a substance that's actually, it's not actually a flavoring or color. It's a substance that's actually broken down for a chemical to make sulfate. So it's like, yeah, it's nuts, like. So, and then aspartame and I can never pronounce the other one, but it's 2 sugars. Again, and then more flavorings, caffeine, which is highly addictive. That's why people find it so hard to be able to come off the likes of these drinks. So this being like marketed as one of the most healthiest, in fact, is not healthy whatsoever.
Years ago, there was a whole buzz of
numbers.
Yeah.
This thing, you can't have this, and M&Ms of a certain color, and you can't eat that color,
and I think it's that thing of that we were so tuning in at that stage to processed food because it was still relatively new. Like, I mean, agriculture has only really come into form the way it is now. It's industrialized since the 1960s. Processed food has only started off, I'm presuming, from around about the 1980s. So 1970s. It's 1970s, okay.
1970s had an epidemic in every category, every race, and everywhere in the world. Mexicans had the highest amount of obesity in like 1 decade, and they managed to solve it next to America, and that's how they were able to actually say that ultra processed foods was the issue. But the biggest thing is that, although I know people, when they hear this and they hear people like talking about weight loss and calories and everything, throw their eyes to heaven. Western diet is the worst diet. But in order for us to be able to live and not be able to have like autoimmune disorders, because I want everybody to have a little think about what I'm saying here for a second. 20 years ago, when I was a child, my mother used to go, I don't know, 20 years ago, and give myself a little bit of grace there, aren't I? 30 years ago, I remember my mother throwing her eyes to heaven, coming out of the doctors going, it's a virus, it's a virus. But now everything seems to be, it's autoimmune. But we don't have a name to what autoimmune is. Whereas we used to have like lupus or, different types of autoimmune disorders, because they're not yet known, because it's all from chemical imbalances, additives, sweeteners, and just for everybody to know that like sweeteners is being proven to not aid weight loss.
Yeah.
So that's very, very important for people to understand that it's not being known to do that. And I know I keep saying I'll come back to it. So our app also shows, so it'll tell you if it's ultra processed or not ultra processed, and it'll tell you the Nutri-Score, but it also tells you the Eco Score. Now, I love the Eco Score. So can I just say, I am a person who had no interest really in it, didn't understand it, didn't really educate myself a little bit on it, and now I'm kind of infatuated. So there's a couple of companies in Ireland. Now, can I say, in less than one hand, there's about 8 or 9 companies in Ireland, and they're B Corp. And that means that they watch the level of ingredients, which is like farm to fork, which means from the minute it goes to that soil, to the packaging, to what I eat. So all the transportation, the process, how long it takes, absolutely everything it takes. And there is only less than 10 companies in Ireland that does that. Strong Roots being one of them, Cully and Sully being another. The Wicklow, or sorry, because I'm going to forget them, Hemp Parts are another group there. They got these guys. Opio, ice creams, Oppo ice creams, I beg your pardon. But there is many other companies in Ireland. And I always say, if you see people online cooking, openly cooking their foods online, I'll tell you who's a great company to do it. Moran's Mega Jam. They come online and openly cook the jams, so you can see what's going into it. They're not actually trying to hide anything. They're actually telling you. And I'm a big, and there's foods I won't part with, and their pesto is one of them. I don't care what score it's going to come up as. And it's a bit like the tea bags. I don't care. But that kind of a thing. So you just have to be extremely mindful. But So that's what they're B Corp companies. Now there is corp companies who already do amazing work. Like I see actually Born Again Bites here. They're on their route to all of this. I actually see them on the call, so I hope they hear me saying this. I've been watching them and they are on that road to greatness. You have to be so many years in business doing so much to get this B Corp level. But to have less than 10 food companies in Ireland is looking at something from soil to our shops is extreme.
I think as well, like there was something that I was reading this report about food as medicine and medicine as food. And it was done, I think, in 2021 in the States, but it was talking about that if people actually substituted about 10% of their beef and processed meat for the likes of legumes, for nuts, for seafood, you know, fruits and veg, that actually it would extend their life by something like 48 minutes per person per day. Now, I'm going to give a shout out to Jodie Wellman, who was the first guest on our Living Legacy Conversations, because her book, You Only Die Once, How to Make It to the End with No Regrets, she's all about extending your life and living your best life. But I think quite often when we think about living our best life, it's about these big adventures and about the big house and the big brands and really showing we've made it. But actually, we can do nothing without food because we have to have the food to sustain us. And yet, quite often, food is the last thing that we actually give true value to.
Yeah, we're too busy doing other things, materialistic. I don't have time. I'm working. I'm this, I'm that. And do you know what the weirdest thing was? I actually did put a video up on my Instagram today. It took me an hour and a half, but I made snacks for weeks today, like weeks, like, you know, and they were healthy snacks from scratch. And when people start scanning the food, by the way, and start changing how to eat, a lot happens. And one of the things that happens is your sensory need for sugar leaves you about 3 weeks in. About 3 weeks in, it leaves you. And a lot of people who consume large amounts of ultra processed foods, you'll notice under here. And actually a perfect image is if somebody could go back about 4 or 5 weeks. I have a white top on me, a white vest top. There is 2 weeks in a difference between a photograph and like the next, like you'll see, I said my face, because I was eating like I was on medication, that same medication that I gained 5 stone. So I came home and I was feeling sorry for myself. I spent 6 weeks in hospital and I was, you know, I had this paresis and again, as you were saying, they wanted me to take the shakes and I was, no way was I taking shakes when I came home. Send me home and I look after myself. I'll blitz up my own food, make sure I get my own. And that is exactly what I've done. And I am not craving, nowhere near or lacking in anything. And I suffer from malabsorption as part of my daily diet.
Years ago, I did a 100-day challenge to stop smoking, so therefore I stopped drinking. And like, I'm pleased to say I don't smoke, and my drinking levels of, like, I can't say I was a huge drinker, but I definitely really rarely drink now. But what I found was if I went out with friends and they were drinking alcohol and I was like, well, I'll have something, like quite often I might have, you know, like cranberry juice or sparkling water or something like that. But what I found was if I wanted to have a mocktail, it is just laced with sugar instead of alcohol. And so you actually come out going, okay, well, I'm obviously not drunk, but now I feel like my teeth are about to fall out. So it's those alternatives that quite often it is, if you're trying to replace one thing, sugar seems to be the replacement that they're giving. So actually coming, like I did, there was a health program I did for 4 weeks during that 100-day challenge. And like, it was great. And I ate very well. But the thing as well is there was some over reliance on certain types of foods and all tinned. But the other thing was that I didn't make the snacks. And I ended up craving like sugar, chocolate, everything. And I ended up coming off the 4-week plan about 3 days before the end because I just was craving sugar. And it's taken me a long time to actually shake that. And I think that's the thing, whereas there's so much sugar and, as you say, sweeteners and everything added, but it's not really highlighted. It's hidden in the label.
Or usually the first ingredient on most foods. One of the biggest things is that people also, and anyone listening has to remember that sugar is an addiction. So you can't just have 60% of food in your trolley and think you're going to give it up tomorrow and all of a sudden start eating, you know, like good, like a dal from scratch. And you're going to have this, like, you know, I've worked over time on even on this. I've been doing this like for, you know, working with the app and doing stuff for like the last, you know, good while. And I said, like, we're launching it in the class this week. And one of the things I told people was, scan the most 5 used items in your house. And if the most 5 used items, such as we'll say a breakfast cereal and something else, you change them 5 items this week and work on 5 other items next week. And then you look at the processing types. So look at the nutrition that you're taking in first, because that reduces down the sugar, and then work on how much processed foods am I actually taking in, because that's very hard. I'm going to show you something that's really scary, and I shouldn't probably do this, but I am going to do it anyway, okay? But a lot of us don't go into the Polish shops, okay, or into you know, a shop that might have anything else. So I'm just going to show you that this is an Actimel. We can go into our shops and buy an Actimel, but just so everybody is aware, they already import products where the scoring system is already in place. So if you can see, the Nutri-Score is actually on the product. So because it was coming into Ireland, if you can see, sorry, I'm doing this wrong, they have the ingredients stuck to the back. But we can buy that exact same yogurt in Dunnes stores with different ingredients, because the law is not here in Ireland to tell them, we're not to have them sweeteners, we're not to have this, but it's in the other EU countries, but we just don't have it here yet. It's not in Ireland yet. That's why I'm fighting to bring the Nutri-Score in. So I'm giving the correct scoring, so that hopefully Actimel and Danone and the other food producers, by the way, will be able to see their scoring system. So once the app launches into the Play Store onto our website, we actually have a free site for food producers to come in. They'll be able to get their scoring, and most of it for free, and they'll be able to actually get told that, like, in order to make your product a C rating to a B rating or an A rating, if you reduce down by this X amount of sugar and X amount of salt, it will give you a better rating. And that's not to help them, it's to help the generations like myself.
And I totally agree, because I think it's really, a lot of it is the mindset and the attitude and the habit. So again, when we're going into the supermarket, do we just out of habit grab the things that we, you know, we're familiar with the labeling, but actually can we take a minute or two extra to look at the other options? Can we maybe shop somewhere else differently?
That's what I do, yeah.
Polish shops, the Asian shops, anything like that, to actually see, because quite often it's probably pure anyway. And the same way within local food markets, quite often people will say, well, I'm not going to buy organic because it's so much more expensive. But that's because mass production is done for the big supermarkets. Whereas if the more we buy locally, the more that the price will actually drop. So it'll actually be worthwhile for farmers and growers and fishers and all to produce the food that we want. At the moment, it's been mass produced for external markets, or we're importing a significant amount in. And I think even in terms of when we look at food security, we have to look at nutrition security. And how do we ensure that we are actually protecting the security of the nutrition and the food that we eat, that we're actually maybe creating for other people to eat? And how do we reconnect people back into the importance of the food, the nutrition, the source, and that it's not just about the packaging and getting that quick fix, but actually, how does eating affect our sleep? How does it affect our bowel movements? How does it actually affect our functioning? How does it affect us when we wake up, our energy levels? How do, as you say, like migraines, I've had migraines all my adult life, and I still haven't figured out the source of it, but some of it is, I definitely dietary. And dairy is one. The other one as well is when people have gluten intolerance, quite often it can actually do with the chemicals that are sprayed on the land and on the grains that are then further processed. So it's actually not the grain itself that you've an intolerance to, it's the chemical that's been sprayed out. So how do we better inform ourselves, but actually connect to the food source, so that we know that we're supporting locally, but also that we are benefiting nutritionally? Because again, food that comes from, like we have in the supermarkets, apples that come from New Zealand, but yet we have an abundance, like Irish Seed Savers, which I used to run, had 180 varieties of apples in Ireland. But yet the supermarkets predominantly import apples from countries so far away that realistically, by the time the apple gets to the shelf, it's either been in some way preserved or it's got no nutritional quality whatsoever. But because we might know the label or the name, we think that that's a better value.
Or our avocados come from Mexico, which is really scary. And actually, a couple of weeks ago, which drove me nuts, I couldn't eat a lot of fruit. I kind of mentioned that a second ago. And I picked up peaches because Aldi kept saying, and I changed my store because if I walk into the store I normally shop and I can go like this, don't even have to look. I can put everything into the trolley, so nothing was changing. So I went in, and that made me look at in a different shop and look at different food labels and pick up some really good products and different things. But one of the one of the things I noticed is that like none of us are going to be ever 100% correct in what we're doing, and it's not going to be any easy fix. And my biggest thing for me is I can only do best by my children, if that makes sense, and that we have the right to make transparency the norm. We can support local food producers, and we can do this. Like I know, like there's a chap, Ollie's Honey, and he's absolutely fantastic. Like, but it's 100% honey. But you could have 4 beside his honey in the shop, and we just walk in and go, "Here's the honey," and just pick it up because as a matter of habit. So it's really important. I really agree with the changing around of them. The eco score includes the pesticides and everything that's been added to it, but you can only go by the information that's given by the food producer.
Is that thing of looking at where is the source coming from. We can grow nut trees here in Ireland, but of course it's not common practice. We can actually eat more peas and beans without having to actually import it all in. But I think it is that thing of what actually works for us, because as you rightly said earlier, the diet that works for you isn't necessarily going to be the right diet for somebody else. So somebody like I had at one time, my antioxidant levels were really low. So clearly I wasn't absorbing enough. I wasn't eating enough fruit and veg. So that's now changed. But it's what other things can I do? And again, sugar would probably be my biggest weakness. So where can I actually
everyone?
Yes.
Everybody's.
And so can I ask then, in terms of how do people get in contact with you? How do they get involved with Weighless Wonders?
So people actually always think it's actually about weight loss. It's not. It's like with things that weigh less on your shoulders. So we do budgeting, everything, as I said, health, sensory processing. We're all, you want to hear of people nowadays getting diagnosed maybe with ADHD, and that's a huge sensory processing regarding food. So, but we deal with all of that type of aspect. So basically, they can come on Instagram, LinkedIn, they can go to the website, they can contact myself, and we're running a 10-week Transform Your Health program in September for 10 weeks. So it's not just like joining up and do a weekly and you're scanning your food. It's that you actually understand by the end of this what's actually going to be, what is actually food transparency. How do I reduce this 60%, make it healthy? But also there's 2 private consultations to be able to understand that, like, I'm perimenopausal, I've got high cholesterol, so I can focus on the person's salts, and you kind of help the person all the way through. Because although you'll be able to calculate all of this, by the way, on the app, it's still, some people still need that one-to-one support or group support.
Your long-term vision with all of this, I'll tap into the whole legacy side of it, but what do you want the legacy of Weighless Wonders and your work to be?
A woman that changed health for women in Ireland.
How do you perceive that change actually? Like, what's your vision of that change actually being?
I can see the app is going to turn from a weight loss fitness app to a health app. It's already doing it all on its own. And that will happen because it's going to be medical. It will happen. I'm too clued into the health, and I think you have to, as I said to you earlier on, you can try do things and say that you're going to do it, but if you've lived a journey of ill health for you and a family member, it's too up close and personal. That's genuinely where somebody does something with passion and true knowledge. So it's completely different. So for me, this will be a health app at the end of the day.
Where to from here? So you have the soft launch of the app. What's next? You've got the 10.
Yeah, and then the bigger launch will happen after Christmas, which will, the price of the app will have to go up in price for the year, because there'll be, I can't say I don't want anybody, competitors or anything. So I don't want to give that away, but there'll be something mega on it. So anyone who signs up now for the year has an amazing January ahead of them, that kind of way, please God, for the rest of the year. And then it's like more programs for focusing on different aspects, and world domination. I'm literally I'm going to France, and I said this at the start, I'm a woman with a disability. I have no shame in saying that, and I have some children with it, and I want to show people that this does not define you. You know, I spent years being a carer, and it won't define people. So that will be the aspiration, to be, you know, and that's why I'm so big, like in the network, I'm so passionate about it, because, you know, next year I'm going to be president, and that way, you know, that year will be the year of resilience and showing people, you know, we as women show up, and, you know, and the Olympics being a perfect example of that. This year it's all about the women, if nobody noticed.
So in terms of, like, I think just to wrap this up, what are the kind of top tips that you would like to pass on to people? Like, obviously sign up to the program, get the app, but in terms of the steps that they can take now and this coming week, what are the things that you would like to put out there for people to take, kind of keep in mind?
Oh, stop looking at convenience. Like, I know just a couple of people after stopping and starting here, but like the likes of sticking to this instead of this, like that is a big one. Stop going with convenience. Yogurt is amazing, and I'm a big fan of all types of yogurts. I'm just a yogurt lover. This one is pretty easy. Like, even if you don't like Greek style, it's really, really good. I would actually give somebody a tip. Go and learn about yourself. Go and learn. Are you a sensory eater? If you were a pen biter in school, you have issues around food, because you're always, because they're looking for wine gums and crisps or something to give that stimulation, you know, that kind of. But remember, we had no diagnosis. You're only hearing adults now with no diagnosis. I think my biggest tip is go learn who you are as a person, and don't be afraid. You don't need a passport to go into the Polish shop, and go in and you'll see them in the fridge. These are in Super Value, by the way, as well. And if you're struggling to eat a foods, especially if there's a family member or an older person, there's more in these than there is in the Ensures. So these are really, really good, and it's jam-packed with minerals and vitamins. Don't normally recommend any drinks, and I do not recommend any whatsoever sports drinks or sugar-free. They're not sugar-free, you know, the energy drinks or anything like that. So
we didn't touch on what is the actual work you do on the sensory side.
So a lot of people here, so you can see I'm sensory. So a lot of people, what happens is that the person would bite on their mouth here. So how you find out if you're sensory seekers, like years ago, you'd buy pens in school like this, and then when you give out, you bite in your teeth and you go like this. Oh my God, I can't believe it, but my teeth don't move, so I'm grinding. So when I'm under pressure, I'm oversensitized. I'm literally able to talk without moving my teeth, and you are deep pressuring. And a lot of people will look for a number of things here. They will look for wine gums for deep pressure, like that type of a style, or crisps. And they are looking for sensory seeking. And what you will often find is that people who are looking for deep pressure would often be sugar or savory, but they would constantly be little eaters, little pickers. You know, that kind of way. So they're constantly picking. And then once they're overwhelmed, they're looking for like the cookie. Then I'm entitled to it. And again comes that addiction that's not related. So, and it takes a while. So usually I work with somebody to help reduce it down. We literally have to detox slowly over 4 weeks from sugars to reduce it. They can still have it, but we reduce it down over 4 weeks by trying to introduce healthier style foods with the crunch. That's what happens if somebody's a sensory seeker. So you can imagine you feel that it's okay to have it because you're oversensitized.
And so in terms of, like, obviously your program covers that, how to determine if you're a sensory eater or if you're not.
Doesn't, but we do that as a personal one-to-one. Yeah, it's called like a chewy tube. Our children would have them called a chewy tube, but you can get them, they're like a necklace, and it allows a person to bite down, especially if you're in an office space. But like, you would also have a lot of fill-ins if you're a sensory seeker and mightn't even know that you're a sensory seeker, because you're just constantly chewing or doing this like all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people are, and they don't know. As I said, we can't be a whole era of non-diagnosis and a whole era of people with diagnosis.
Fascinating. I think I could talk to you for another hour, but I'm going to let you go.
I'm ready to go to sleep.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's been incredibly informative. So for those that have joined more recently into the call, you can follow the replay on on YouTube at livinglegacy_IE. So please subscribe, and then we will have the interview here with Caraldine on YouTube now next week. We do already have the 4 previous Living Legacy conversations, so please do check them out. But for now, Caraldine, can I just say thank you so much for your time. It's been educational. none the least. And I think definitely we should have another conversation in the future to kind of see how things go when you're world domination, and also in terms of how people can connect more with nutrition and better and be informed as well to kind of live their best life as well. So for now, thank you so much.
So thank you all.